loaded, ready to go. 3 hours, broadcast excellence, hosted by me, your guiding light, Rush Limbaugh, here at 800-282-2882. Email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. So Ambassador Gordon Sondland testifying as we speak. He began his testimony this morning, and it's being regarded by the drive-by media as he dropped bombs. One bombshell after another, supposedly implicating Trump and implicating Rudy Giuliani. And there's one thing, before we get into the specifics, there's one thing that I think is missing in all this, and Devin Nunes tried to get to it when it was his turn to question Ambassador Sondland. By the way, it might help people to know who Ambassador Sondland is. There are just a couple of things about it. You remember when Trump was first inaugurated, and even during the transition, he was announcing various appointments and members of his staff. Do you remember me saying that some of these staff questions really puzzled me? Well, this one was one of them. Gordon Sondland it was a Jeb Bush supporter, number one. And he broke from Trump. He literally broke away from, he denounced Trump over the Khizr Khan episode. You know, the Muslim Gold Star family that spoke at the Democrat convention, Trump's reaction to that. Sondland said it disgusted him, it was repulsive and so forth, but then he ended up donating $1 million to the inauguration or some such thing, and that's how you buy an ambassadorship. But I never understood somebody that's a pro-Jeb guy from that wing of the Republican Party and then publicly denounces the Trump candidacy after the Khizr Khan thing, ends up being an ambassador. So there's things that I don't understand. I'm not in that loop, and so there are just some things that remain puzzling to me and probably always will. But of all the things that have been said today and of all the things that have been reported, I want you to hear this. It's Ambassador Sondland being questioned by Adam Schiff, pencil neck. It's audio soundbite number 7 on our roster. And the question, Mr. Morrison and Ambassador Taylor have related a conversation that you had with the president following the Warsaw meeting, in which the president relayed to you that there was no quid pro quo, but nevertheless, unless Zelensky went to the mic and announced these investigations, there would be a stalemate over the aid. Is that correct? And was that an accurate reflection of your discussion with the president?
I believe I just asked him an open-ended question, Mr. Chairman. What do you want from Ukraine? I keep hearing all these different ideas and theories and this and that. What do you want? And it was a very short, abrupt conversation. He was not in a good mood. And he just said, I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. Tell Zelensky to do the right thing. Something to that effect.
So if you put that together with the testimony that occurred yesterday afternoon while this program is going on and afterwards, we had the witnesses yesterday were Kurt Volker and Morrison. Both of them had spoken with Trump. Both of them were on the Ukraine call. Both of them have firsthand knowledge of Ukraine decisions. And they both testified under oath that there was no bribery and no quid pro quo, and that aid was not held up as a bargaining chip. And at the end of the day yesterday, I mean, you go read Michael Goodwin, the New York Post today, and the Gallup poll is showing Trump at new highs at this stage. So after the testimony yesterday, everybody watching had assumed that the bottom had dropped out of the Democrat case. Because the two guys that actually had firsthand knowledge, who were on the call, testified under oath there was no bribery, there was no quid pro quo, and that aid was not held up as a bargaining chip. You know why aid was held up? It's the one thing that's missing, the context in all of this, the major context that's missing. And as I say, Devin Nunes tried to get to it in his questioning of Sondland. Ukraine was a corrupt hellhole. under the previous president, not Zelensky, but the president prior to him, during the Obama administration. Ukraine was a corrupt hellhole. And it was during that era that Biden arranged the deal with Burisma for his kid, which is $83,500 a month, 3-point-some-odd million dollars a year. And the kid doesn't know anything about natural gas or energy. And so during that period, Russia had attacked Ukraine. We did not provide any aid whatsoever, despite being obligated to do so. The Obama administration refused to help Ukraine as Russia came in and literally took 1/3 of it with no opposition. We had made a deal with Ukraine. If you will disarm to make Europe safer, if you'll disarm, we'll come to your defense if you're attacked. They disarmed. Russia attacked them to annex Crimea. The Obama administration did not come through with any aid. Don't know why. The story is that he didn't want to irritate Putin. It was Obama who had this soft relationship with Putin, didn't want to make him mad, didn't want to disappoint him, what have you. So that all happens. Trump is elected. During the campaign, Ukraine is actively attempting to undermine the Trump campaign. They are working with the Democrats, and they are working with the FBI and the DOJ to help concoct this scheme that Trump's colluding with Russia and all. Ukraine was up to their eyeballs in this. Ukraine was corrupt as it could be. So Trump knows that Ukraine is corrupt as it can be and is depending on U.S. aid. And there's simply no way that he's going to provide the aid unless they straighten up. He's not going to continue U.S. policy of funding corrupt regimes for whatever reason. He's there to clean it up. He's there to get the United States out of meaningless relationships. It's one of the reasons he was elected. It's one of the big points that reverberated with the American people. And to do this, Trump had to take on the entire United States foreign policy national security apparatus, who were much in favor of the status quo. Trump wanted to upend it. So there were two things. Trump's not wanting to just, without any concerns or assurances, he'll want to fund a regime that's not going to reform itself. He doesn't want to perpetuate corruption and all kinds of dangerous stuff being done with U.S. money. It makes perfect sense that he would ask for some sign that they were serious about reform before providing U.S. aid, which was ultimately provided, by the way. So the context of this is that Trump knows he's dealing with a regime, a nation that has just been led by a very corrupt bunch that's been voted out. That corrupt bunch was working to undermine his election, working with the DOJ, the Obama DOJ, the FBI, and all that. Of course he's not going to trust these people. He's going to have to see some indication that they are serious about reforming before they get U.S. aid. He's not just going to provide it willy-nilly. And so asking for some kind of show that the Ukrainian new president, Zelensky, is serious is part of the deal. He's just not going to write him a blank check. There was no quid pro quo. 2 witnesses yesterday. No bribery, no quid pro quo. Aid was not held up as a bargaining chip. It was held up because Trump wanted to see serious signs of serious reform. Now we go back to Sondland. Testifying today, he asked Trump open-ended, what do you want from Ukraine? Says he wasn't in a good mood. He said, I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. Tell Zelensky to do the right thing. Bingo. What's the problem here? The problem is that the Democrats have crept up to this by creating this grand illusion that the only thing Trump cared about regarding Ukraine was somehow them engaging in action to penalize Joe Biden. What Trump was interested in getting to the bottom, why in the world would, in his mind, here's Donald Trump has overcome the odds, been elected president. Why in the world would he automatically, without challenge, send billions of dollars to this country that had just tried to sabotage his own campaign and may continue to sabotage his own presidency until he sees evidence that there has been change or reform? So now that's when Rudy Giuliani enters the picture. But we don't have, even now, we don't have a single witness who can say that Trump demanded a quid pro quo. They're all saying Rudy did it. They're all saying Rudy did this and he was speaking for the president. None of these guys wanted to work with Rudy. They didn't like Rudy. But once again, this is Trump not trusting the existing apparatus that had worked with and had permitted a corrupt Ukraine government to proceed. The Obama administration didn't care about it. The Obama administration was more interested in appeasing Russia. They didn't care about Ukraine. Why the hell were they not providing aid for Ukraine to defend itself when Russia attacked? So the context here, and to me, explaining why Donald Trump does what he does and why he did what he did is easy if you know him. Now, you get some of these career ambassadors and these career State Department national security people who don't know him and who claim to be shocked by his very... You should have heard Sunday. This guy, he used a three-letter word. He used the word ass. I don't know if I can repeat that. These guys supposedly offended by what is said to be raw language that wearing so thin on me that we're talking here about choir boys in the Democrat side, choir boys in the State Department never even think of curse words. Give me a break. Donald Trump represents such a low aberration. But Schiff now thinks he's got his article of impeachment, and Ken Starr agrees. Adam Schiff thinks that he's got an impeachment, article of impeachment based on obstruction. He even cited Richard Nixon's name. That Trump, because Sondland testified today that he wanted all kinds of documents and he wanted all kinds of notes, but the White House and the State Department wouldn't furnish them, and so he couldn't be sure of things. He's not a note taker, and he doesn't recall things specifically like other people who take notes, and he's not given any cooperation. So Schiff is taken as obstruction of justice, exactly what Nixon did. But to me, just to repeat this, the context of why Donald Trump approached Ukraine the way he did, what these people are trying to say is that the only thing Donald Trump cared about regarding Ukraine was making sure that they investigated Joe Biden and his kid. That's what they want you to believe is the only thing Donald Trump cared about. The author of the agenda, Make America Great Again, who's honest as the day is long about his feelings of America's involvement in foreign policy and in the world, that America is not going to be taken advantage of anymore, that America is not going to be laughed at, that America is not going to be assumed to be the open pocket waiting to be picked, that if you're going to have an association with the United States, if you're going to have a good relationship, then you got to play ball too. The days are over where we're just going to throw money around the world and hope it buys loyalty. You're going to have to show it. Ukraine was a corrupt regime that attempted to sabotage his own campaign. And by the way, under Sondland claimed to not know any of that. And I believe it. I believe these guys live in a shell. I believe they live in a cloistered little cocoon where they're ignorant of things that are going on in the real world. Devin Nunes asks, are you aware of this Ukraine name and this action? Have you read this story in Politico? Have you read this story in the Washington Post describing various efforts by Ukrainians to sabotage the Trump campaign? No, I'm not. How are you not? They're not, because the drive-by media didn't make a big deal out of it until after Trump was about to be inaugurated. The Politico story on Ukraine's attempts to sabotage Trump happened in January of 2017, and the purpose of the story was Ukraine was scared to death. Trump actually won despite their best efforts to sabotage his campaign. And now they realized they were going to have to do a 180 if they were going to get any aid from the United States, because the guy they tried to smear actually ended up being elected president. And Sondland said, I didn't know anything about that. No, Chairman, I didn't know anything about that. Well, if you don't know about that, then you can't possibly understand the context in which all of this stuff in Ukraine happened. And if you don't know about that, you can't possibly understand why the whistleblower did what he did and why Vindman did what he did. Because the efforts to sabotage Donald Trump are ongoing. They have not stopped. They are still happening at full speed. And Trump's own ambassadorial corps claims not to know about these efforts. No, I didn't know about that. Well, if you don't know about that, then there's no way in hell you can understand Donald Trump's approach to this. There's no way in hell you can understand his attitude about this. If your exposure to this is no different than what it's always been, State Department thinks this about Ukraine, State Department thinks this about European Union, State Department thinks this about Russia, then there's no way you're going to understand somebody, elected president, who's not going to trust that apparatus. Of course he's going to go get somebody he trusts, like Rudy Giuliani, to convey his messages to Ukraine. He doesn't know who he can trust. At the same time this is going on, he's dealing with James Comey trying to undermine him with the Steele dossier. All of this stuff is happening at the same time. And they're trying to portray Trump as ignorant and stupid, unqualified, unprepared for. He's been running rings around these people. They're embarrassed and they're ticked off, and this is how they're trying to cover for the fact that he skunked them at every turn. I got to take a break. We'll do that. We'll be got these. The president's on his way to Austin, Texas, to meet with Tim Cook of Apple. They're going to tour the new factory where the new Mac Pro computer's being made. He's out on the White House lawn on the way to the helicopter. And he said this about Ambassador Sondland's testimony at today's hearings.
I just noticed one thing, and I would say that means it's all over. What do you want from Ukraine? He asks me, screaming, what do you want from Ukraine? I keep hearing all these different ideas and theories. This is Ambassador Sondland speaking to me. Just happened. To which I turned off the television. What do you want from Ukraine? I keep hearing all these different ideas and theories. What do you want? What do you want? It was a very short and abrupt conversation that he had with me. They said he was not in a good mood. I'm always in a good mood. I don't know what that is.
By the way, there's some other stuff about Trump today. There's this book that's out about Trump's behavior. I can directly contradict much of the stuff in this, or some of the stuff about Trump's behavioral characteristics. But here is the next soundbite. It continued here.
Now he's talking about what my response. So he's going, what do you want? What do you want? I hear all these theories. What do you want, right? And now here's my response that he gave, just gave. Ready? You have the cameras rolling? I want nothing. That's what I want from Ukraine. That's what I said. I want nothing. I said it twice. Now, if you weren't fake news, you'd cover it properly. I say to the ambassador in response, I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. Tell Zelensky, President Zelensky, to do the right thing. So here's my answer. I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. Tell Zelensky to do the right thing. Then he says, this is the final word from the President of the United States. I want nothing. Thank you, folks. Have a good time.
Does Trump sound a little ticked off to you there? Here is, again, grab soundbite 7. We got time to squeeze it in. Here's what he's talking about Sondland said this morning.
I believe I just asked him an open-ended question, Mr. Chairman. What do you want from Ukraine? I keep hearing all these different ideas and theories and this and that. What do you want? And it was a very short, abrupt conversation. He was not in a good mood. And he just said, I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. Tell Zelensky to do the right thing. Something to that effect.
There you go. And that's what Trump is talking. He said, this is over. There's nothing there. There's nothing more here. This is also interesting. Ambassador Sondland now facing the grilling and grueling question from the Democrat lawyer in the committee. Sondland just now said, I now know what the quid pro quo was. I didn't know it at the time. I now know that Trump wanted an investigation of the Bidens and Burisma, but I didn't know it until now. He didn't know it until now. So how does he know it? What, the whistleblower? Was it the phone call, the transcript of the phone call July 25th? Sondland said he didn't know at the time. If he didn't know at the time, how big a deal could it have been? Do you realize how many of these witnesses in these 4 or 5 days of hearings have cited media reports? These are the people about whom media stories are written. And yet these guys, many of them are claiming, I didn't know it till I read it in the media that X was happening or this was happening. So here's Trump's ambassador to the European Union. Sondland's the ambassador to the European Union. He says, I now know what the quid pro quo was. Now, I haven't heard this, so I can only assume that he's talking about when Trump told Zelensky to do the right thing. He's now thinking do the right thing means investigate the Bidens and Burisma. But Trump also said, I don't care. I don't know. I don't want a quid pro quo. I don't want anything. I just want Zelensky to do the right thing. I also got a couple of emails during the break. Russia, keep talking about a Politico story about Ukrainians trying to sabotage Trump. What is that? It's a great question. It was a Politico story, but it was completely ignored. Not by Politico. I mean, they ran it. They didn't amplify it, and it didn't show up anywhere else. It ran on January 11th, 2017, and this is like 20 days or 10 days before Trump is inaugurated. And the headline of the story, Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire. It's a story by Kenneth Vogel. It's a reminder. It's an inconvenient truth for the Democrats. They can pretend that Trump didn't know this, but reality is a stubborn thing. And it's all part of being able to understand the context in which all of this happened. And here's how this story begins. Donald Trump wasn't the only presidential candidate whose campaign was boosted by officials of a former Soviet bloc country. Ukrainian government officials tried to help Hillary Clinton and undermine Trump by publicly questioning his fitness for office. Ukraine also disseminated documents implicating a top Trump aide in corruption, that would be Manafort, and suggested that they were investigating the matter only to back away after the election. They were full speed ahead, trying to destroy Trump, take him out, until Trump wins. And this story, Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire, subhead, Kyiv officials scrambling to make amends with the president-elect after quietly working to boost Clinton. Ambassador Sondland said he didn't know anything about this. And I'm sure Vindman didn't know anything about this. And I'm sure that Jennifer, what's-her-name yesterday, Williams didn't know anything about it. I'm sure that Yovanovitch didn't know anything about it. I'm sure none of these people knew anything about it. As far as they were concerned, the only efforts being made to undermine the election were Trump with Russia, which has been exposed as a hoax. Ukrainian government officials tried to help Hillary Clinton and undermine Trump by publicly questioning his fitness for office. They helped Clinton allies research damaging information on Trump and his advisors, a Politico investigation has found. A Ukrainian-American operative who was consulting for the Democrat National Committee met with top officials in a Ukrainian embassy in Washington in an effort to expose ties between Trump, Paul Manafort, and Russia. So Ukraine was right there, the corrupt Ukraine demanding American aid. was right there helping whoever from the Obama administration was running this coup against Donald Trump. Ukraine was right there. And then they had to do a quick 180 when their efforts failed and Trump was elected. And that's what this story is about, January 11, 2017. So you have to throw this in as part of the context to explain Trump's attitude toward Ukraine and his desire to see proof from the new president that they were serious about reforming and getting rid of the corruption which had been aimed at him. And while all of that's going on, Trump is dealing with the Steele dossier and the James Comey effort with Clapper and Brennan to set him up. Even before he was inaugurated, they're looking for ways to get the Steele dossier disseminated into the mainstream media. At this point, Trump doesn't know who to trust, but everywhere he looks in official Washington, he sees people that want to do him harm. Everywhere he looks, he sees people, including in the Republican Party, attempting to sabotage and undermine him. So to me, the context of this is quite necessary in order to explain not just Trump's actions, but his thinking as well. And this charade, this impeachment inquiry and the ongoing effort to prove that Trump colluded with Russia is nothing more than the people who think they've been wronged by virtue of Trump winning the election. Something that they can't abide, something they can't digest, something they still cannot accept. Now, the 2016 efforts that Ukraine made are the central focus of Trump's inquiry with Zelensky, the new president of Ukraine. Because look at it from Trump's standpoint again. Here, during the corrupt period of Ukraine, during the Obama administration, they've got a deal with the sitting vice president and his son that is paying the sitting vice president's son $83,500 a month, $3.1 million a year. And it's a no-show job, and it's a payoff when you get right down to it. It is the corrupt government of Ukraine buying a relationship with the Obama administration via the vice president. It's in this midst that the vice president, Joe Biden, has bragged about getting a prosecutor in Ukraine fired because he's getting too close to his son, getting too close to Burisma. Biden got the guy fired by threatening to withhold further aid. Does any of this sound familiar? It was Biden who claimed and told the Ukrainians, if you don't believe me, call Barack. Barack will tell you. The money isn't coming until you get rid of this prosecutor. I'm leaving at 5 o'clock today, and I better hear from you. And they did. Within 6 hours, they fired the prosecutor. Biden was happy. His son wasn't going to be investigated, and they get the money. Same bunch of people trying to undermine Trump's campaign in 2016. The witness testifying today claims to not know about any of this. Then Biden's name never came up in anything. Burisma now and then, but Biden's name, I didn't know any of this. I didn't know that Ukraine was attempting to undermine the president's campaign. No, I didn't know that. So if you're Donald Trump, you're looking at this, you're looking at the Democrat Party getting away with literal, real corruption and family payoffs while they're trying to railroad him out of town on a bunch of stuff that's made up and so far from the truth, the distance is incalculable. I think you'd be a little ticked off, too. Now you've got your ambassadorial corps and your national security apparatus telling you you've got to give aid to Ukraine. They've got a new president. We've got all these witnesses have made it clear they value Ukraine. It's their post. Ukraine is all they care about. Ukraine and Kyiv. We love the Ukrainians. They're a great ally. We must do that. If Trump's being pressured, give them the aid. Give them the assistance. And do it through the usual normal channels. They're demanding it happen. Trump's saying, wait. I'm going to need some kind of evidence that I'm not throwing money down a corrupt rat hole. And one of the ways he wants to see that is if they will actually investigate the previous government's corruption in trying to undermine his campaign. It makes perfect sense. But you have to understand the context, and you have to appreciate who Donald Trump is. They're trying to literally criminalize all of this as bribery, as a quid pro quo. At the end of the day, the witnesses yesterday on the call, direct knowledge, said there was no quid pro quo, there were no demands. Sunderland today says the president told him, I don't want anything from Ukraine. There's no quid pro quo. I just want Zelensky to do the right thing. All the other witnesses are hearsay, second-hand, third-hand. They don't have any first-hand knowledge at all. But Schiff has now got his article of impeachment. He's got his obstruction of justice and cover-up article of impeachment. He could barely contain himself. So when I take a break, we'll come back and get started on the sound bites, and I want you to be prepared. Ladies and gentlemen, since we're going back, using the time machine to go back to the graveyard of forgotten news stories, I'm holding here in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers an editorial from the New York Times on December 12th of 2015. The subject of this New York Times editorial is Joe Biden and his kid. The New York Times editorial, December 12, 2015, is calling for Hunter Biden to resign from Burisma. I have it right here. New York Times, December 12, 2015. The headline, Joe Biden lectures Ukraine. It's all about Crimea being seized by the Russians while Biden's kid gets rich, and they say it's a bad look and that Hunter Biden needs to resign. Now, skip forward 4 years to today, and the New York Times and the rest of the drive-by media thinks there's nothing wrong with it. Hunter Biden working for Burisma, not even working for, just showing up, not even showing up, getting $3 million a year. Nothing to see there. This goes well with the Politico story, January 11, 2017, Ukraine having to do a 180 after attempting to sabotage Trump's election, now trying to get back on his good side. I was happy to see, by the way, Devin Nunes just picked up this whole notion with Sondland of what all had happened to Trump to explain the context of all of this. And Sondland's sitting there like a bump on a log, acting he doesn't know any of it. He's not even acting like any of it moves him. And you can't understand any of this without that context. This context is being studiously, purposely ignored, just as the Democrats' effort to run this coup is being ignored, just as the failure of the Mueller investigation is being ignored. And as far as anybody is concerned, the only thing that's ever come up that they've tried to get Trump on is this phone call to the president of Ukraine. Now, after the morning testimony, the statement from Ambassador Sondland, and the questioning by Democrats, Adam Schiff decided that we needed a break before getting to the Republican questioning by Devin Nunes. But Pencilneck didn't think anybody needed a break. He used the break to go out and conduct a press conference to say, we did it, we've nailed Trump, we've got him. And here is how that sounded.
I think today's testimony is among the most significant evidence to date. And what we have just heard from Ambassador Sondland is that the knowledge of this scheme, this conditioning of the White House meeting, of the security assistance to get the deliverable the president wanted, these two political investigations that he believed would help his reelection campaign, was a basic quid pro quo. It was the conditioning of official acts for something of great value to the president, these political investigations. It goes right to the heart of the issue of bribery, as well as other potential high crimes or misdemeanors.
There you have it. They say it's bribery. And so Trump is now guilty of bribery. We've got the evidence. Sondland provided it. That's going to be in one of his articles of impeachment. And Ken Starr, by the way, just so you know, on Fox has said that we're now getting close to where Republican senators will make the trek to the White House to tell Trump to resign. We're getting very, very close to that, said Ken Starr today. So everybody's got Watergate on the brain. Everybody is looking at this as repetition, replay of Watergate. Let me get started on the phones. We'll start in Des Moines. This is Bill. Great to have you on the program, sir. Hello.
Rush, thank you so much for taking my call. I've been a fan since my first book on tape, I Told You So, in '93.
Thank you, sir, very much. I appreciate that.
Quick question. Why don't the Republicans just out the whistleblower on live TV? Why don't they just do that? Because we both know, and especially you, we both know that the Democrats would do it and not lose a wink of sleep over it.
Well, we're so long past the relevance of the whistleblower now. I mean, there may be some value as far as the American public finding out who the guy is and how things work here, but outing the whistleblower, to me, we're way past that now. The whistleblower served its purpose, but the Democrats had to scramble when Trump released the transcript of the phone call because it pretty much made the whistleblower irrelevant. Why do you think it would be such a big deal to release the name of the whistleblower?
Because it's like the Mueller investigation and that whole hoax. It shows a pattern of how these things start and who they have the connection to. I mean, they're all getting rich off of these GoFundMe pages. Blasey Ford, I'd love to be a millionaire off GoFundMe pages.
So you think releasing the name of the whistleblower, where he came from, how it all happened, would help to American people understand the bogus origins of this?
Absolutely. I believe that the independents, with the poll coming out yesterday, that 50% of the independents say no impeachment. I think it would sway another 20-some%, in my opinion.
All right. Well, I appreciate the call. Bill, thanks much. I got to go because I'm out of time, folks. We'll be back after this. Don't go away.
He doesn't hold.
Greetings, welcome back. Great to have you, Rush Limbaugh, here behind the golden EIB microphone, broadcast excellence, here on the fastest 3 hours in media. Telephone number, if you want to be on the program, is 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbaugh@eibnet.us. So what we've learned so far today, Ambassador Sondland says that Trump never told him directly that aid was tied to an announcement of investigations. And yet, the news of the day is that Sondland has dropped a bomb, that Trump demanded a quid pro quo. And yet there are two different quotes from Sondland today in which it is pointed out that he says the exact opposite. And this is one of them. Trump never told Sondland directly. Sondland said he never told Sondland directly that aid was tied to an announcement of investigations. Sondland today says, I now know what it was for. I now know it was the investigation of the Bidens. He said what it was tied to previously to that. The big bombshell today, Gordon Sondland testified this morning that there was a quid pro quo and that Trump ordered it and that everybody knew it and that it was delivered through Rudy Giuliani. The problem is this is not what Sondland said in his deposition in the basement room of the Capitol where Schiff was running the closed-door hearings. Nor did he say this in his amended testimony, which we heard all about when that happened. I mean, that was earth-shattering, big, earth-breaking news that Sondland had amended his testimony after hearing what some other people had said. I don't remember the particulars of it. I just remember that he had amended it. In the depositions, and in his amended testimony, Sondland said he presumed there was a quid pro quo, but that he didn't have any basis for that presumption other than what he had read in the media or heard other people say. And contrary to saying that Trump ordered it, Gordon Sondland said that Trump told him directly there was no quid pro quo and that he was counting on Zelensky to do the right thing on his own. Can I be the only one here confused by this? We have reported bombshells that Gordon Sondland testified that there was a quid pro quo, and yet, here, grab audio soundbite number 7 again. Let me look at it. Ambassador drops bombs, followed president's orders. Giuliani pushed quid pro quo. Pence knew. Pompeo knew. Sondland has brought everybody in this administration in on this, by the way. They all knew it. They were all guilty. They were all part of it. And yet Sondland, this is actual testimony from Sondland, audio soundbite number 7 from this morning.
I believe I just asked him an open-ended question, Mr. Chairman. What do you want from Ukraine? I keep hearing all these different ideas and theories and this and that. What do you want? And it was a very short, abrupt conversation. He was not in a good mood. And he just said, I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. Tell Zelensky to do the right thing. Something to that effect.
Right. Okay, so that seems pretty obvious that Sondland said Trump did not specify a quid pro quo, and yet the bombshell news of the day is that Sondland said there was a quid pro quo. So the Democrats pounced, and Schiff declared a bathroom break so that he could hold a press conference to announce Sondland's bombshell testimony and to give the networks time to really drive this home. Schiff said, but before we go to your Republicans, let's take a break. We'll take a break out here. And the networks all convened back on their panels. And then it was moments later, oops, breaking news, Adam Schiff is at the podium. And that is where he announced, and let me pull that up again. I think it's number 29. Is it number? Yeah, number 1. This is what Schiff said during the supposed bathroom break.
I think today's testimony is among the most significant evidence to date. And what we have just heard from Ambassador Sondland is that the knowledge of this scheme, this conditioning of the White House meeting, of the security assistance to get the deliverable the president wanted, these 2 political investigations that he believed would help his reelection campaign, was a basic quid pro quo. It was the conditioning of official acts for something of great value to the president, these political investigations. It goes right to the heart of the issue of bribery, as well as other potential high crimes or misdemeanors.
Right. So they've got the word bribery in. And he made sure that Pelosi's promise that these hearings would reveal bribery was apparently kept as well. I'm looking for a soundbite that I've already misplaced. And it's Schiff. I know it's number 20. Oh, this is where Schiff supposedly outs Biden and Burisma, but I can't find the transcript, so I'll save it for when I can find it. I got it. Here we go. We're going to move forward at audio soundbite number 29. This was pretty recent. This is within the last hour and a half. And this is Adam Schiff apparently hanging the Bidens out here, but not aware of it, I'm told. I haven't heard the bite, so let me listen to this, and I'll characterize it after that. Schiff is asking Sondland about the connection between Burisma and Vice President Biden and his son, Hunter Biden, and Sondland's response.
You testified in response to my colleagues in the minority something along the lines of a lot of people did not make the connection between Burisma and Biden. I think a lot of people have real difficulty understanding that. Tim Morrison testified that I think it took him all of doing a Google search to find out, oh, this is the significance of Burisma. It involves the Bidens. Are you saying during all this time up until the call you never made the connection between Burisma and the Bidens? You just thought that the president and Rudy Giuliani were interested in this one particular Ukrainian company?
Again, my role, Mr. Chairman, was just to get the meeting.
Well, I understand that, but my question is, are you saying that for months and months, notwithstanding everything Rudy Giuliani was saying on TV and all the discussion with Rudy Giuliani, that you never put Burisma together with the Bidens?
I didn't, and I wasn't paying attention to what Mr. Giuliani was saying on TV. We were talking to him directly.
All right. Now, so Schiff has just connected Burisma and the Bidens. Now, Schiff doesn't know that he's done it. He thinks he's exonerated it because he got an answer from Sondland. Oh, no, I didn't know about that. See, Sondland is golden today. As far as the Democrats are concerned, whatever Sondland says is gold. And if Sondland did not know that Burisma meant the Bidens, then it couldn't have meant the Bidens. But this just feeds into my theory that these people don't even understand Trump's motivations. The people working for him don't even understand his motivations. Here is Trump's ambassador, a Republican, to the European Union, admitting that he had no idea that when he heard the name of the company Burisma, that it had anything to do with the Bidens. The New York Times editorialized back in 2015 that Hunter Biden should resign because of this illicit deal. Now they don't think there's anything wrong with it, but back in 2012, Obama has just been reelected. The Democrats and the media looking for a clean slate for the guy. There's a lot of dirt out there. They got to, they're already talking about the upcoming Democrat presidential campaign for 2016. They got to clean things up. They need Hunter Biden to get out of there. Now it's no big deal. But the fact that Gordon Sondland said he had no idea that Burisma equals or includes the Bidens means that he cannot possibly understand what Trump's real motivations here were. Earlier today, Sondland made it clear he had no idea that Ukraine was involved in trying to undermine Trump's 2016 campaign. Now, Sondland's a Jeb Bush Republican, came to Trump late, even though he abandoned Trump for a time during the Democrat convention when Trump said what he said about Khizr Khan, the Gold Star military family, lost a son who was testifying against Trump. Speaking against Trump at the Democrat National Convention, Trump reacted to it, and Sondland was supposedly offended greatly and denounced Trump, and then somehow ends up as Trump's ambassador to the European Union because he donated $1 million to Trump's inauguration ball or committee or transition committee, whatever it was. But none of these people had any idea. Look, you'll have to forgive me for overworking this if that's what you think. But the context of this is crucial. And Devin Nunes tried to get to it. You can't possibly understand what Trump was attempting to do with Ukraine if you don't know about Ukraine's effort to undermine him in 2016, if you don't know how corrupt the Ukrainian government was prior to President Zelensky. If you don't understand the Trump campaign promised not to just give away American foreign aid dollars anymore. We weren't going to give money away to people that were not really allies. And here is a country that had worked to undermine his election. It makes perfect sense Donald Trump thinks they do not deserve American foreign aid, that they're going to have to show that they are reformed, that they are new and anti-corruption. And not just him, not just against him, but all told. The Russians annexed Crimea away from Ukraine. Nobody tried to stop them. Nobody did. Ukraine couldn't. They didn't have any arms after Obama had demanded they disarm in exchange for us coming to their defense, which we didn't do. But none of this is hard to understand. If you understand Donald Trump, if you really understand him, and if you really understand the role Ukraine played, as far as Donald Trump's concerned, Ukraine was James Comey. Ukraine was Strzok, Smirk. Ukraine was Brennan and Clapper. They had all tried to undermine his election, and they are still trying to undermine his presidency. You think Trump is just going to hand over billions of dollars in aid without giving some sign, some evidence that this new president is not of the same frame of mind as the old corrupt one? Yeah, but Rush, Trump apparently was demanding that they investigate Burisma and the Bidens. I mean, that's kind of... Well, Burisma's a corrupt enterprise, as evidenced by the deal with Joe Biden. What is so strange about getting to the bottom of? If you pledge to the new president that you're going to reform your country, you're going to go anti-corruption, you got to go after something like Burisma. That's one of the ways you could prove it. When Trump says, I want Zelensky to do the right thing, it's obviously what it is, among many other things he could do. There might have been conditions on the assistance. At the end of the day, they got it. It's another thing that's not being mentioned today. Ukraine got their assistance, and there was no investigation of the Bidens. So based on a bunch of hearsay, what Donald Trump supposedly want from third and fourth party participants to all this, we've got bribery, and we have impeachable offenses. So we'll see how this goes this afternoon if somebody can make this context case. I tell you, folks, I find myself in a situation here that I frequently am in, which is things to me that seem easily understandable and explainable. And in light of that, some of this is really a big deal, that this can all be blown away and swatted away. And I seem to be the only one who thinks so. I seem to be the only person that I know of with this attitude about it. Well, that's partially because I understand the details of it. I have knowledge. I know Trump. I know how he thinks. I know who he is. And I know the history of this. And Trump's own ambassador claims not to know anything about Ukraine's attempts to sabotage his campaign. That's what he says. I guess since this is Believe Everything Gordon Sondland Says Day, that we'll have to believe him when he says that. Anyway, I'm going to get back to the phones, find out what you all think about this. We'll take a brief obscene profit break. It's great to have you with us in the EIB network. Hello.
Oh, thank you so much for taking my call. You know, this is so outrageous and destructive, what is going on in our country, that a party could take on a sitting president that was elected by the people of this country in good faith to control a message, to create a narrative, to take away truth and only allow you to see one tree in the forest for information so that they could make this president destroy his character and make him unelectable in the next election. I find this very concerning. There is so much background that hasn't been brought out because the Democrats will not allow it to be brought out. They have to do it in secret. They have to distort the process. They have to distort the Constitution because this president has actually taken a terrible, terrible beating, and he has stood tall through it all. They tried to deliver information. The President Zelensky, earlier this year to the United States, they were thwarted through the State Department and the Department of Justice.
Wait. What, who is they? They tried to deliver information to Zelensky.
This was the Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko earlier, and then President Vladimir Zelensky tried to deliver information to the President of the United States through the State Department and the Justice Department, and it was thwarted. President Zelensky asked for a visa. Wasn't denied, but it was never given to him. They were trying to deliver message to this country that there was corruption, and they were trying to bring it to this country. It was reported on earlier in this year. I believe it was around April of this year. That information has not come forward. I've heard Republicans talk about it, but I have not heard it be part of this process. It sets a background. It sets an understanding so that there's truth here of what it is on what the president is. It is the president's job, and we should thank him for trying to have the monies of this country used properly and not for corruption. So if there's evidence of the corruption and our president maybe has knowledge of this now, then he is actually trying to be very careful and protect these monies of the American taxpayers to be used properly. And, you know, there was also a dialogue that he also talked about Europe not contributing to this. And he also had, when they contributed to the Ukrainian, then he also contributed. The money got there. The weapons got there. He's done more for the Ukraine than any previous administration. He has stood tall and took all this ridicule that he's taken. He's not allowed any representation. They block his voice. They block the Republicans' questioning. They block their witnesses. This is not a truth campaign. This is a smear campaign, Rush.
Totally, 100%. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right about the Zelensky angle. They've made it very difficult for him to even get his thoughts about all this. That he's, in fact, the last person they want anybody to hear from right now.
Because they don't want the truth. They want to create a narrative so that they can feed the American people this limited narrative that they don't see all the truth. They see one tree in the whole forest to create a perception to destroy this president's character.
Why are they doing this?
Because they want power and they want the position back and they want him to be unelectable in the next election. Because he stands for the people.
Yeah, but
he's done more of the people's business. He is our firewall, Rush. He's the firewall for the American people on things that we care about. We care about our sovereignty of our country. We care about the Constitution. We care about our systems being honorable, our Justice Department, our CIA, our Constitution. We hold those of great value. And he is our firewall.
Great way to put it. That's exactly right.
It's very, very concerning.
But the
and
question,
we owe this president our gratitude and respect.
Yeah, I agree. But the reason I keep asking why is because we still haven't gotten there. It's not just political disagreements that they have with him. It's far. Welcome back to the fastest 3 hours in media, hosted by me, Rush Limbaugh, your guiding light through times of trouble, confusion, murkiness, depression, dismality, and even a good time. So I continue to get a quick snapshot of things during commercial breaks, and I've got my little spies feeding me little tidbits of what is happening. Apparently, this happened after the program began today. The lackey for Adam Schiff is this guy named Goldman. He's an MSNBC guy. He's acting as the staff counsel for the Democrats. And he's one of Pencilneck's lackeys is up there. And apparently, he refused to believe Sondland couldn't remember various things. Sondland made a big deal in his opening statement of the fact he's not a note taker. He's not one of those people that takes notes all the time, so therefore he doesn't have a self-kept record of meetings and conversations. And so the State Department and other places in government have not let him see things, documents and other things, that would help him to, quote, refresh his memory. Have you ever been suspect of that phrase, refresh your memory? That's been such, that has gnawed at me ever since the Watergate hearings. Allow me to refresh my memory on that. What it means, oh yeah, you caught me in the lie. Let me see if I can remember another lie to tell you to get out of the first one. Oh yes, let me refresh my memory. Well, Sondland has used his lack of being a note taker as a crutch today to not be able to provide firm answers on some things. So he has been saying, to the best of my recollection, yeah, something like that. Yeah, I think that's pretty close. Yeah, that might work. And it's been very frustrating even to Schiff's lackey, Mr. Goldman, who at one point grew so impatient that he kept demanding, after Sondland would give him an answer that he didn't want, he kept demanding, I think you can do better than that. I think you can refresh your memory again. No, that doesn't work. Can you refresh your memory again? Finally, Sondland got frustrated. and said, again, Donald Trump never talked to me about any security aid ever. Donald Trump never talked to me about any security aid, meaning defensive military assistance for Ukraine, ever. So there can't have been a quid pro quo from Trump that Sondland can say existed, and Sondland has pointedly said that Trump said that there wasn't a quid pro quo and that he didn't want a quid pro quo. And yet the drive-by media bombshell is, or story is, that the bombshell is that Sondland has confirmed that Trump demanded a quid pro quo. Also, I must point out that the estimable Chris Wallace on Fox News noticed something that I noticed. And he referenced it. And it was that Sondland claimed not to know that the Bidens had anything to do with Burisma. And Sondland has said numerous times today that he didn't learn until recently that whenever the word Burisma was mentioned in any of this, that it included the Bidens. And Chris Wallace said, that's just hard to believe. How can you not? You're an ambassador to the European Union. You've been around all this stuff for years. How in the world could you not know that Burisma only means anything to anybody because of the Bidens and their association with it? And as Chris Wallace said, all you'd have to do is Google it. If you Google the word Burisma, the first thing you're going to see is a picture of Joe Biden and his adult son, Hunter Biden. I have been admonished for calling Biden's kid a kid. He's not a kid, Mr. Limbaugh. He's a 49-year-old, unaccomplished, deadbeat adult. Do not call him a kid. Kid gives him an excuse. Okay, all right, I'm sorry. He's a 49-year-old, hadn't accomplished anything other than getting the $3 million his dad arranged for him, young man. Middle-aged guy. But anyway, it is odd that Sondland doesn't know about Burisma, and I believe it. That's the difference. Chris Wallace thinks, oh, there's something shaky. No, Chris, these guys don't know jack about what Trump has gone through. They don't know jack about Ukraine's involvement trying to sabotage his campaign. They have no idea that the Bidens are up to their eyeballs in scandal in Ukraine. They have no idea. And if they did know, they probably wouldn't care because the Democrats have a license to steal stuff like this. So I totally believe these people don't know jack. I think they're so caught up in their own self-importance, in their own egos. I think they only read select cables, dispatches, and the New York Times and the Washington Post style section to see if they're in it. If the party they attended might have been mentioned in the style section, and if so, are there pictures? I can totally believe that Sondland hasn't the slight. Now, you might rush, come on, it's not possible. It's not possible that this guy doesn't know that the Bidens are up to it hip deep in Burisma. Yes, it is, folks. This is the thing. It is entirely possible that these epitome of State Department employees are blithering ignoramuses. It is entirely feasible. And I mean by ignorant, I'm not saying stupid. I'm saying they don't know. It's entirely possible. They are so compartmentalized in their own world, which revolves around them. Sondland had nothing to do with Ukraine while all that was going on. His wife is a big real estate babe from Portland, I think. She's in the hotel business. He's a socialite. Sondland, it has been said of Gordon Sondland that if you're in a room and you want to find out who the most powerful person in the room is, find Sondland because he'll be standing next to him. He seeks the most powerful people and sidles up to them. I don't know Gordon Sondland. I couldn't tell you. All I can do is because I know the professional political elites. I know that class. I know that substrata of humanity, and I know how they think, and I know of their arrogance. And believe me, to me, it's entirely possible he does not associate Biden with Burisma or vice versa. And therefore, it's entirely possible that all of this made no sense to him and that Trump could be a Looney Tune. It's entirely possible something. Burisma, who the hell cares about Burisma? What's Burisma got to do with American foreign policy? I don't know. Now, here's Ken Starr. I quoted Ken Starr, and Fox is apparently scrambling to say that Starr has been misquoted. Starr did not say, apparently, that Republicans are getting ready in the Senate, getting ready to walk to the White House to tell Trump to resign. I thought I heard Starr say it. I was watching Fox when Starr came on. Starr said, "Oh, this is it. This is the end of it. This is they've got their article of impeachment now. This is over." Well, here's what he said. This was this morning. This is before the start of the hearing. Okay. I heard Starr during the break, I believe, but let's listen to it anyway. Soundbite number 33 coming up. 3, 2, 1.
The real issue is the senators are watching. Are senators going to now say, in light of what we hear today, it's going to be a long day, even with the ambassador alone. In light of what we have heard, we need to make a trip down to the White House. That historic example set during the Nixon presidency. From what I've been able to glean, I don't think that's going to happen, but obviously what happens today has the potential to be a game changer.
Right, because Sondland was going to come out and drop the bomb that Trump had demanded a quid pro quo. Now, Jennifer Griffin of the Fox News Channel has tweeted clarification. Starr was quoting Schiff in the first part of what he said, but added that he would assume new articles of impeachment would now be drawn up, describing today's testimony as bombshell and a game changer. All right, we're going to get back to the phones, but first, my friends, another obscene prophet. Right on. Here we are back at it. Rush Limbaugh behind the golden EIB microphone. Snurdly just asked me a good question. He said, do these guys not know what's going to happen to them? I said, who are you talking about? He said, well, look at Vindman. Does Vindman not know that his days are over? This guy has just violated various aspects, Uniform Code of Military Justice. He's guilty of rank insubordination. And Sondland, do these guys not know that they're finished after turning? I said, wait, no, it's the exact opposite. In fact, I got a note from a good friend in the military, retired, who offered the same opinion about Vindman yesterday. This guy has violated so much of the Uniform Code of Military Justice: insubordination, not following the chain of command, implementing his own policy, claiming this guy actually claimed that he was the architect of foreign policy in Ukraine. Vindman did. Vindman actually said that he wrote the talking points for Trump for the phone call. Really? And I wrote my military man back. I said, I think you are reading this wrong. And he wrote me, but what do you mean? I said, Vindman's a hero. Vindman has been following somebody's orders. He's going to get rewarded for it. I said, look, the left has corrupted practically every institution in this country, and they've got a foothold in the military now, and it's not news that they have. We've got our political left-wing climate change generals. We got our warrior generals. Vindman's following somebody's orders, and he's going to be rewarded for it. He's going to be taken care of for it. He's going to be protected for it. Vindman's not going to get charged for anything, and he is guilty of insubordination. He has not followed the chain of command. The president is at the top of his chain of command, but he's following some other chain. And we don't know who's at the top of the chain that Vindman's following. We don't know who's at the top of the chain the whistleblower's following. We think we do. Somebody at the CIA, past or present. Maybe somebody in the military. No, Vindman's going to be protected. He's going to be rewarded. Same thing for Sondland. You know what happens to Republicans that turn on Republicans? They're celebrated. They're taken care of. until they stop being useful. What do you think's going to happen to these guys? I mean, I'm seriously interested. You asked me the question, do these guys not know what they're in for? What do you think's going to happen to them? Why would Vindman's military career be over? Because he can't be trusted, but he can certainly be trusted by somebody. He can certainly be trusted by somebody to follow his orders and do what he's done. This guy has demonstrated profound loyalty to somebody or to something. Vindman is not rogue. This is what everybody needs to understand. He's not a one-off. He hasn't decided on his own to save America from this weasel Trump. He is following somebody's orders. So was the whistleblower, and so is Sondman. We're in the middle of a coup here, gang. Somebody is pulling the strings for this. You look at these hearings. The Republicans are not allowed to call any witnesses. There was a closed-door session on Saturday that the transcript has not been released. Let me see what this is. Devin Nunes just pointed out that the person who can testify about the real reason that aid was held up is a guy named Mark Sandy. He was deposed behind closed doors Saturday, but they have not released the transcript of his deposition because it hurts Sondland, and it's allowing the Democrats to impute the worst about all of this. They actually had a witness testify Saturday, Mark Sandy, who can testify to the ultimate truth of the reason aid was temporarily withheld. They've got his testimony. They won't release it. The Democrats are not allowing the Republicans to call any witnesses, either rebuttal witnesses or fact-based proactive witnesses. All they can do is cross-examine Democrat witnesses. That's all they're being permitted to do, and only a few Republicans are being allowed to actually do it. If the American people, we are told, are so concerned about fairness, well, there isn't any in any of this. We had a woman call the bottom of this hour who was eloquent as anybody has been on the absolute one-sidedness of this. But my point to all of you is that these people are not rogue. Vindman is not off the reservation. He's on somebody's. And he's following order. Vindman is an order taker. Now, it is obvious that he is very impressed with himself at the same time. To sit there under oath yesterday, claim that he coordinated American foreign policy with Ukraine, that had to be news to everybody watching, including the people that really do it. We all know a guy like this. We've all had a guy like this in our offices. We in our classrooms, in college, high school, whatever. But my point is that this guy is taking somebody's orders, like the whistleblower was taking somebody's, and still is. And I believe Sondland is too. Sondland's been so much over the ballpark. His original testimony had to be amended after he heard other testimony. This is the third version of Sondland's version of events that we're getting today. So that's the thing. I mean, the real troubling thing is that all of these people who, in the normal ebb and flow, would be found untrustworthy and unhireable, and so they're going to be rewarded if they're not already being rewarded, because they are loyal to somebody. They are loyal to something, some organization. They are following their orders. They are doing their duty. All of these people believe that the president is not the commander-in-chief. And he's not. To have you with us as you are tuned to the only place you want to be. having all perspective of these hearings placed right before your very eyes and ears in real time, because that's what we do here. We do play-by-play of the news. Happy to have you. Telephone number 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. We are, at the moment, rolling off some audio. Jim Jordan interviewing, questioning, I should say, Gordon Sondland. And it's good. About some mythical meeting that didn't happen. Jordan made a couple of good points, though, that I want to share with you. Grab audio soundbite number 7. This soundbite is the gold mine of the day, and it's become even more golden. This is Ambassador Sondland responding to a question from Pencil Neck today about a quid pro quo Trump demanding from Zelensky before there would be aid, security assistance offered to Ukraine. And Pencil Neck says to Sondland, is this an accurate reflection of your discussion with the president?
I believe I just asked him an open-ended question, Mr. Chairman. What do you want from Ukraine? I keep hearing all these different ideas and theories and this and that. What do you want? And it was a very short, abrupt conversation. He was not in a good mood. And he just said, I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. Tell Zelensky to do the right thing. Something to that effect.
I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. Jim Jordan asked Ambassador Sondland why he didn't include the opening statement, which I have to confess I missed. I mean, I didn't realize this was not well, I did, but it didn't make sense, because the bombshell is that Sondland somehow said today that Trump demanded a quid pro quo, and yet in the answer you just heard, he plainly says the president said he wanted nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. Tell Zelensky to do the right thing. Well, it turns out Sondland did not put that in his opening statement, a 23-page opening statement. Jim Jordan said, why did you not put it in there? And Sondland said, I ran out of room. And Jordan said, you ran out of room in a 23-page opening statement. You didn't have the space, you didn't have the time, you didn't have the room to include this? No, I didn't. I couldn't squeeze it in. So if Pencil Neck hadn't asked the question the way he asked it, Sondland may never have said this. Pencil Neck, at the end of the day, ends up sabotaging himself inadvertently with this question. But that is a really, really curious thing, that Sondland omits this from his opening statement, which allows everybody to write that bombshells have dropped, that Trump demanded a quid pro quo. I saw that. I watched the opening statement. I didn't hear that. I turn around and look at drive-by media headlines, bombshell here, bombshells dropped there. Then I hear Sondland's answer to the question, and it's the exact opposite of what they're saying. And then Jordan elucidates from Sondland, I didn't have time to put it in the opening. He was hiding it. And then Jordan started talking about the whistleblower to Sondland and made another good point. Do you remember how we were first informed of this phone call, Ambassador? Well, remember what we were told? The news media said that a whistleblower had come forward and said that this call was frightening, that it was scary what the president had done in this phone call, what the president had said. It was frightening. It was outrageous. I had to report it immediately. And, of course, we now have the transcript of the phone call. There's nothing in the phone call. There is literally nothing impeachable. Every witness has been asked, what is the impeachable offense in that phone call? Dead silence has been the answer. Crickets have been the answer. Folks, I don't care what day of the week it is, and I don't care what the status, we are all being played in a major, major way. We are all being victimized by an ongoing creation of a grand illusion that the Democrat Party and their cohorts in the media are jointly perpetrating upon us. It is a giant illusion, and I'm using that word specifically and purposely. It isn't true. It's made to look like something that isn't. The phone call contains nothing scary, nothing frightening, nothing illegal, nothing impeachable. That's why we're here. The whistleblower and that phone call and his original report, which was secondhand, is why we're here. We have had Ambassador Sondland admit today he had no idea that Burisma meant Biden's. We've had Ambassador Sondland admit that he didn't know anything about Ukraine's efforts to undermine the Trump campaign in 2016. We've had Ambassador Sondland omit the real bombshell of these hearings from his opening statement. The real bombshell, again, play it again, Sam, audio soundbite number 7, this is it.
I believe I just asked him an open-ended question, Mr. Chairman. What do you want from Ukraine? I keep hearing all these different ideas and theories and this and that. What do you want? And it was a very short, abrupt conversation. He was not in a good mood. And he just said, I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. Tell Zelensky to do the right thing. Something to that effect.
I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. That was not in his opening statement. It came in the answer to a question from Schiff later on. Here's Devin Nunes, soundbite number 32. This is Nunes. I applauded this. I told you about it. Attempting to provide the context for all of this, as I so artfully and timely did in the first hour of today's busy broadcast.
Let's talk about things that we do know are facts. President Trump does not like foreign aid to start with. Is that correct, Ambassador?
I've heard that, yes.
Now looking back at clearly the challenges and concerns the president had with the involvement of high-level Ukrainian government officials, including the ambassador here in the United States that attacked him during his presidential campaign, the concerns of leaks that were leaks or just made-up stories and conspiracy theories that were spun in the Steele dossier that the Democrats on this committee own. They paid for it. Other DNC operatives that were working with the Ukrainian ambassador here in Washington, D.C. to dirty up your boss, the President of the United States. We're not going to hear from those witnesses. Just like we're not going to hear from the person we deposed on Saturday. We're not going to hear about what the real reason, the person who's in charge of making sure that foreign aid is delivered, we're not going to hear about what actually happened with the foreign aid.
There it is. That's the reference to the testimony from Mark Sandy on Saturday behind closed doors that Pencil Neck and the Democrats are not releasing. He's the person in charge of making sure foreign aid is delivered, cuts the checks, if you will. We're not going to hear what actually happened in the case of Ukraine from the guy responsible for it. We're not going to hear from any of the witnesses that participated in dirtying up Trump during the 2016 campaign. It was during some of this line of questioning that Sondland admitted that he didn't know anything about any of that. Let's go to CBS. Jonathan Turley. This was this afternoon's CBS coverage of the House Intelligence Committee impeachment hearing. During a recess, Nora O'Donnell, who is the new InfoBabe anchorette of the CBS Evening News, was talking to Jonathan Turley, George Washington University Law School professor, and she is seeking his reaction to the testimony to that point.
I think the Republicans did gain ground today. In fact, today was the first day where I felt they had made progress. And what they did is they tied together the August 31st call with Senator Johnson, who says that the president was adamant and angry that there was no quid pro quo. And that was before the whistleblower thing came out. And they tied that then to September 9th, where he's equally adamant and angry, according to Ambassador Sondland. And then 2 days later, the aid is released. those are actually hits below the waterline for the Democrats.
Right. You're not going to get that take anywhere else in the media, but the Republicans are making progress. And again, just at the top of this hour, Representative Michael Turner was questioning Sondland, got him to admit that he had no evidence of a Trump quid pro quo. So Sondland not only testified earlier today that the president said he didn't want one, Sondland had to admit that he didn't know. He had no evidence of a Trump quid pro quo. But, folks, the headlines have gone out. The headlines from this morning were already written before Sondland even testified, based on the release of his statement. Bombshells dropped today. Republicans nearing time to walk to White House to tell Trump to resign was the subheadline. And even Ken Starr was promulgating it. That was probably next up. All because Sondland had dropped the bombshell that Trump did demand a quid pro quo. How does this happen? When Sondland later testified that Trump said explicitly to him, no quid pro quo, and then mere moments ago, Sondland said under questioning to Michael Turner that he had no evidence of a Trump quid pro quo, that it was just his presumption. Like every other witness who has testified, it's their assumption, it is their opinion based on media reports, based on conversations with colleagues. None of these people know anything. This is why, Snerdley, I'm telling you, they are following somebody's orders. Somebody is running these witnesses. Somebody is commanding them. Somebody is scripting them. Somebody is orchestrating this. Vindman, Yovanovitch, Kent, Taylor, now Sondland, who's only changed his testimony 3 times. He admitted he had no evidence of Trump quid pro quo. It was all his presumption based on media reports, based on conversations with colleagues. But as I say, the headline's already gone out. Let's see, what is Drudge saying here? Ambassador drops bombs, followed president's orders. Giuliani pushed quid pro quo. Pence knew. See, that stuff's already out there. Those are just links to stories. Don't blame Drudge. Those are just links to stories that are out there already. They're AP. They are Yahoo News. They're Reuters. And they were pre-written. Bombshells dropped. And yet Sondland testified. Trump explicitly said to him he didn't want a quid pro quo, and now just admitted that he just presumed that Trump did. And they tried dumping it all on Rudy earlier today. Rudy has tweeted the following. During the July 24th conversation, Donald Trump agreed to a meeting with President Zelensky without requiring an investigation, without any discussion of military aid, no condition whatsoever. During the July 24th conversation, the phone call was July 25th. During a July 24 conversation, Trump agreed to a meeting with Zelensky. This is before the phone call. The day before, Rudy says Trump agreed to a meeting with Zelensky without requiring an investigation or any discussion of military aid or any condition whatsoever. And Rudy says this record shows definitively there was no quid pro quo, which is the same as no bribery. End of case. Which is what Trump said today on the way to Marine One. The case is over. This is over. There was no quid pro quo. There couldn't have been any bribery. But the headlines have gone out. Bombshells dropped today. Schiff called a press conference. He said, getting time now to take the march to the White House. Trump has done what Nixon did. He's obstructed justice. It's an abomination is what this is, folks. It is a literal abomination. I don't know what else to call this. You know, I've had a lot of reaction to my little story opening the program yesterday. The story, I ran across the story in the UK Telegraph. Survey in America. High school and college students between the ages of 16 and 24. 70% had never heard of Mao Zedong. 40% had never heard of Joseph Stalin. There was a third communist dictator thug they'd never heard of. On Monday, I was at a charitable event where there were some people of this age group, and I asked them, you know who Mao Zedong is? Yeah, the Tiananmen Square guy. None of them knew who Stalin was. It's an example of how the left has corrupted American education and infiltrated it. They're literally not teaching the horrors of communists, communism, communist leadership. They're not teaching that communism equals murder. When I was growing up, if Mao Zedong took a swim in the river, there was a picture of it to prove the guy was alive. I mean, the media was all over Mao Zedong. You couldn't... What did he do, Mr. Limbaugh? He murdered 40 million people who refused to participate in the Cultural Revolution. What was the Cultural Revolution? It's where people signed on to Marxism, gave up their individuality. It's where people pledged their lives and fortunes to the state. And if they didn't, they were sent to re-education camps, which meant they were killed. Really? That's right. Communists did that? That's right. Colleges are meant to provide an education, a transformative experience for attending students. Hillsdale College does not participate in this whitewash of communism or any other ism. Hillsdale College teaches the Constitution. Hillsdale College teaches America. Teaches American history, teaches American exceptionalism, doesn't proselytize, just teaches the facts about the uniqueness and the exceptionalism of this country, which it truly is. You can take some of the courses yourself free and online at rushforhillsdale.com. Hillsdale wants to teach anybody who wants to learn. If you're above college age and you don't go to campus, you can still take many. If you had an option to have a home security system, you would have one. A lot of people have not availed themselves of the option because they're expensive and it's a little complicated, complex, and you roll the dice. You look at how the statistics shape up and you just say, the odds of my house being burgled are kind of small. I'll spend money elsewhere. But at the end of the day, you'd still really like to have one. Well, you need to relook at this now, folks, because a security system brings a peace of mind to you, for your family, for yourself. I mean, just like you lock your front door when you leave for the day, you do that. Gives you a sense of security. You think you've done something to protect the home. It's another layer of protection, and you have faith. You rely. The locked door is going to work. Well, Simply Safe makes a system that does much more than lock the door. It'll give you infinitely more security, infinitely more comfort, satisfaction. And it's not going to break the bank. It's not too expensive. It's easy to operate. It's fun to operate, fun to install it. Very effective protecting your home. Simply Safe system includes sensors and motion detectors, but no wires. Put them on the doors and windows, put the motion detectors, the glass break sensors anywhere you want in your house. Because there are no wires, it isn't complex. Maintenance is not complex. Troubleshooting is not complex. Installation is a snap. It uses Wi-Fi. You leave your home, you activate Simply Safe, you are protecting your family, all your possessions, the property itself. It's a system you can monitor on your phone at all times, and there's 24/7 security monitoring to call the cops or fire department if something bad happens, and that's only $14.99 a month. Connects your system to the cops. And right now, ready for this, you can save 50% this week on any new system at simplysafeusa.com. This is, everybody's absorbed up at Black Friday sales. Black Friday this, Black Friday this, Black Thursday, Green Friday, Brown Monday, whatever it is. Simply Safe's getting in on the action. 50% off this week. It's an early Black Friday sale deal at simplysafeusa.com. By the way, Mr. Snerdley, I have just been informed, Snerdley's been asking me, what, do Vindman and Sondland, do they not know what's going to happen to them? I need to run this down because anybody can say anything. And maybe I should run it down before I say it. Apparently, the reason Sondland is trying to thread the needle today, it turns out that he's been getting threats. It turns out that his wife's real estate businesses and hotel are being boycotted with the help of an Oregon Democrat congressman. The Democrat leading the boycott is U.S. Representative Earl Blumenauer, Democrat, Oregon. Now, how is that not witness intimidation? Is the Army going to put Sondland and his family on an Army base, give him 24/7 protection like we were told was going to be extended to Lieutenant Colonel Vindman? Congressman Blumenauer tweeted this morning after Sondland's bombshells, Gordon Sondland, welcome to the resistance. He said he was going to call off the boycotts of Sondland's wife's hotels and real estate business. Well, this could be why Sondland wrote his opening statement to please the Democrats and the media. This could be why he did not include in his opening statement the fact that Trump never once said to him quid pro quo and said, in fact, the opposite. Trump said he didn't want a quid pro quo. Sondland did not put that in his opening statement. U.S. Representative Earl Blumenauer has been running a boycott of Sondland's wife's businesses. Well, now, hell's bells, is that not witness intimidation? Here we have the Jim Jordan sound bites that I referenced earlier. This is Jordan asking Sondland about his statement that the president told him he didn't want anything from Ukraine, and we have Sondland's response, obviously.
Why didn't you put that statement in your opening statement? I think you said you couldn't fit it in. Is that right? That we might be here for 46 minutes instead of 45 minutes.
It wasn't purposeful, trust me.
Wasn't purposeful?
No.
Couldn't fit it in a 23-page opener. The most important statement about the subject matter at hand, the President unites in a direct conversation with you about the issue at hand, and the President says, let me read it one more time. What do you want from Ukraine, Mr. President? I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. I want this new guy, brand new guy in politics. His party just took over. I want Zelensky to do the right thing. I want him to run on and do what he ran on, which is deal with corruption. And you can't find time to fit that in a 23-page opening statement.
Bingo. Bingo. I told you he said it, but there you have heard it from his own mouth. So a Democrat congressman has been leading a boycott effort of Sondland and his wife's businesses. And after Sondland's opening statement, which the media has reported, bombshell, Sondland says quid pro quo, the Democrat Congressman Blumenauer tweets, welcome to the resistance, Gordon Sondland. You think anything's going to happen to this congressman, Mr. Snerdley? No, nothing's going to happen to Congress. He's going to get a medal because the media got its headlines today. The media was able to literally lie about Sondland's testimony because he did. One more Jim Jordan soundbite. Now, there's a context to this that I'm not quite sure of, and I wish I was able to tell you. It's brilliant. You're going to love this. You're going to be standing up and cheering. It's about a meeting that didn't happen, but I don't know any more than that. I didn't hear this. I heard the tail end of it during a commercial break, so I don't know what meeting that didn't happen this is referring to. It begins with Jordan asking, Ambassador, when did it happen?
Ambassador, when did it happen?
When did what happen?
The announcement. When did President Zelensky announce that the investigation was going to happen? On page 14, you said this: was there a quid pro quo? Your opening statement. As I testified previously, with regard to requested White House call, White House meeting, the answer is yes, that there needed to be a public statement from President Zelensky. When the chairman asked you about the security assistance dollars, you said there needed to be a public announcement from Zelensky. So I'm asking you a simple question. When did that happen?
Never did.
Never did. They got the call July 25th. They got the meeting, not in the White House, but in New York on September 25th. They got the money on September 11th. When did the meeting happen again?
Never did.
You don't know who was in the meeting?
Which meeting are you referring to?
The meeting that never happened. Who was in it?
The meeting didn't even happen. When did President Zelensky announce the investigation was going to happen? See, I think what this is about is that Zelensky had been demanding a meeting, Oval Office meeting or whatever, with Trump. No, it can't be that, because that did happen. When did President Zelensky announce the investigation was going to happen? And he didn't, because there wasn't one. The investigation never did happen. I guess that's what the meeting is, the investigation. So there needed to be a public statement from President Zelensky. When the chairman asked you about the security assistance dollars, he said they need to be a public announcement from Mr. Zelensky. When did it happen? It never did. So I guess the announcement is what Jordan means by meeting here, unless I'm still missing something. Back to the phones. Akron, Ohio. John, great to have you on the EIB network. Hello.
Kudos, Rush. I think that the Democrats are absolutely petrified that Trump is going to win another 4 years and prosecute Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, James Clapper, and a litany of others in the deep State Department.
Well, that ought to happen before the election.
I would hope so, but I doubt it's going to happen.
Well, I don't know. Folks, there was at that famous Federalist Society meeting last week, where Kavanaugh was honored, Barr spoke. And let me check this. I think I got so much here. Where is it? I think I've got, as a holdover, some of what Barr said at this meeting. I mean, he came out firing 14 different barrels of ammo at the Democrats and what they, we have it at number 20. Grabs on number 20. I'm going to squeeze it in real quick. Barr is running the investigation. They've impaneled a grand jury, which means there are going to be indictments because it means it's a criminal investigation. Here is Barr at the Federalist Society convention, a bunch of lawyers, in Washington on Friday.
Immediately after President Trump won election, opponents inaugurated what they called the resistance. And they rallied around an explicit strategy of using every tool and maneuver to sabotage the functioning of the executive branch and his administration. Now, resistance is the language used to describe insurgency against rule imposed by an occupying military power. It obviously connotes that the government is not legitimate. This is a very dangerous and indeed incendiary notion to import into the politics of a democratic republic. What it means is that instead of viewing themselves as the loyal opposition, as opposing parties have done in this country for over 200 years, they essentially see themselves as engaged in a war to cripple by any means necessary a duly elected government.
That ought to tell you all you need to know about what Barr's intentions are here, folks. From the moment he made that speech, Democrats began demanding that he be impeached. All weekend long, Barr should be impeached. I saw it on Drudge. Barr should be impeached. He should be impeached. The Democrats were saying it left and right. That ought to tell you, folks, they're not going to wait till after the election to do this. We're in a race to get this done. It may take longer than the 2020 election. I don't know. Look, I've got to take a break. Also about the Jordan thing, I think what it was illustrating the meeting was a stand-in for all of these things that supposedly happened that never did. And by getting Sondland to admit that that meeting didn't happen and Zelensky never had to do what he was being made to do, that didn't happen, I think what Jordan was doing was illustrating that all of this is a bunch of caca. Anyway, got to go. I'm really running out. Rush Limbaugh, the fastest 3 hours in media. Okay, I've got clarification now. Jim Jordan is exhausted, folks. He got some things confused. The meeting he was talking about was a meeting supposedly promised to Zelensky in the Oval Office. Remember the story of Zelensky desperately wanted to be in the Oval Office, and for credibility and for the high-profile nature of it, the power denoted to it. And supposedly the message was that Trump was saying, you don't get the meeting unless you investigate the Bidens. You don't get the meeting. You don't get the meeting unless you find out what you don't get it. And it turns out that there was a meeting. It was in New York. They met in New York during the United Nations confab there. The meeting that we've been told was part of the quid pro quo. It happened. What didn't happen, there was never any announcement from Zelensky. This is what Trump was demanding, supposedly. Trump was demanding that Zelensky publicly announce to the world that he was going to investigate the Bidens. And if he didn't do that, he wouldn't get the meeting. He didn't do it. There still isn't an investigation of the Bidens, and yet he got the meeting, which was the point that Jordan was making, that there wasn't an announcement. And the meeting was not in the Oval Office, by the way. Zelensky wanted the Oval Office, but they met in New York. Anyway, Jordan's point was that everything everybody's been saying about Zelensky demanding this or Trump demanding Zelensky do something for the meeting, he got the meeting and didn't have to do a damn thing for it. Zelensky did not ever announce an investigation. He didn't do one thing to get the meeting. It just happened. Meaning nothing happened. There could not have been any bribery or quid pro quo, which has been stated that there wasn't. But the truth of all this has been buried by the headlines this morning. Sondland says quid pro quo. We'll see. Everything has backfired in these people so far. I think this is going to as well. Every time they've gone public with stuff like this, they start feeling their oats, and it comes back and bites them. And this will too now, especially if the news of Sondland's wife business is being boycotted by the Democrat congressman. We'll see. You know, one of the things that strikes you about all this is privacy and how the president doesn't do anything private. All these people on all these calls, everybody listening in, monitoring, people didn't go out and be able to say what they want to say, but you don't want to have to live your life like that. You don't want people listening into your phone calls. You don't want people monitoring your internet connections, but there are people trying to, particularly on public Wi-Fi. So how do you prevent them? You get a VPN. You go out, get a virtual private network, and the absolute best is from Norton. Norton Secure VPN creates essentially a pipe around your connection that nobody can see. They can't even see the pipe, much less what's inside the pipe. It is utter privacy. It's encrypted. It's only $3.33 a month for 5 devices. If you want privacy on all of your internet connections, norton.com/VPN. $3.33 a month. Norton.com/VPN. It's easy. It's an app. You download, you run it, install it, log in once, and you're up and running.